Welcome back. It's time to lay out some guidelines or construction lines, however you want to think of it, so that the chances of making errors when shaping the Vulcanite component here, it reduces your chance of screwing something up. And as long as I've been doing this, and as many stems as I've made, I wouldn't dream of trying to make a stem without doing the steps that I'm about to show you. I might be able to, but it would be like driving a car without a seatbelt on. And by the time you realized you shouldn't be doing that, you're through the windshield. So the rubber here, the Vulcanite piece, has been inserted into the shank full depth, and we've lined up the slot that we just got through cutting so that it is exactly level with the bowl, the way you'd smoke it if it weren't such a fat chunk here. And they make sure that you're light tight at the junction of the Vulcanite and the stummel here. Then take anything will work that is large enough to control. Don't try to do this with like a sewing needle or a safety pin. You don't have enough control. Something like this is designed for the task. It's called a scribe. It's a hardened steel tip and a handle, but you don't need anything this deluxe. But the more designed for the task it is, the more control you have and so on. So make up your own mind on stuff like that. What I do know for sure, with no compromise, that guy must be sharp. And when I say sharp, I mean hypodermic needle sharp. It's so important that I sharpen it before every use in the following way. This is some 2000 grit paper, which is practically a polishing compound. And just take this, hold the needly part here, whatever that is, about 15, 18 degrees from the surface, and just like you're shading in a drawing with a pencil or something, just roll it with your fingers and lightly drag it across there, and you will get a polished, super sharp tip, which will get you ready for this next bit. Okay. Just watch carefully here. This is going to go down onto the touching the Vulcanite at roughly splitting the angle between the two. Not quite. It's a little lower than that. More like, what is that, 30 degrees from the shank? Yeah. And then using firm but light pressure, if that makes any sense, trace around the end of the shank. Control is key. And if you do it right, you will leave a very slight but very sharp-edged channel, a groove in the face of the rubber. Yeah, I'm going around a second time. If you were asking yourself, is he meaning to do this twice? Yes. Because I want it to be deep enough that the step to follow will work. And that step is, okay, now we're going to take it apart. And although you can see the exact outline of the end of the shank on the face will make it doubly easy to see by filling in the little groove we just made with a paint stick. Now I did this once in the very first set of videos that I made. It's getting on 6-8 months ago now. But I did it gratuitously just to let you know it could be done. At that time, the shank needed to be reduced in diameter so that it wasn't really necessary to put the line down the way we just did. But this time, especially on a square shank, it is going to save your butt. It allows you to modify the shape of the stem when it's off the pipe with total accuracy. And there we go. Now there was some experiments done a while back on making replacement stems for pipes, where they would try to make a casting, a duplicate shape of the stem, and then use that as like a dummy so that they could do some shank leveling and so forth, or rather without having to level the shank. I don't know how well those worked, but it seemed like quite a lot of trouble when all you have to do is put a line on there, and then you don't have to have it plugged into the pipe in order to shape the stem. In fact, you'll know that you're exactly dead on to a couple 10,000ths of an inch when you're shaping if you keep lowering it until the line just barely disappears. You can just scrub away wantonly, with control, but you got to know what you're doing. But you don't have to pay a whole lot of attention beyond don't cross the line, and then you can get very, very gentle and crawl up to the line and just erase it, and you are spot on. It's like magic. It keeps you from having to plug it in and mess with it constantly, take it out, check it, take it out, check it. So anyway, there you go. This is just a lacquer stick fill-in paint. I've had these for so long I don't know where they came from. I can't recall. I'm sure you can find them on Amazon. Okay, the next bit of construction line business we're going to do is put the stem back in the stummel. Make sure that you align it with the little diagram or the little drawing that you just made. Otherwise, you'll get yourself in other kinds of trouble. Yeah, double check that you're dead on. Rotate it, check it all the way around. And we're good. And this next one is just take a piece of tape. This is 1/4 inch wide masking tape. Nothing fancy. And lay it across the slot. Now you can see the slot through the tape slightly, and keep adjusting it until it is both centered with and parallel to the slot. And you can probably see that. Now the slot's it's lighter in color than the surrounding area. And then pull this down and center it on the high point here, this keel that's the side of the shank. So it's centered on there. Now, whether or not this, when you align it this way, it may or it may not be completely dead square parallel to the sides of the rubber here. And it doesn't matter. You're going to carve what you want out of that anyway. So the exterior, don't pay any attention to the alignment of the tape to the edges of this, because you may have drilled the hole a little crooked. And all you're doing is connecting the points between the end here, the button end, and the body of the pipe. So disregard whether or not the tape lines up with the barrel here, the big round chunk. Pay attention only to the alignment on the stone. And now the second one, it's thick enough now that you can't really see the slot that well, but you just align the one piece of tape over the previous one, like so. Almost takes 3 hands to do this sometimes, but once you got it, you got it. Okay. And then, to keep all this from taking a walk, take a stouter piece of tape and use it just to anchor, to hold this in position so that it won't snag on your finger and get peeled off of there or something. So, what this line down the side does, and why I chose 1/4 of an inch to be the right size, is you can now remove material with abandon. You watch out for the button, but you can use whatever means of gross material removal you want. I use a knife grinder. Some people put this in a vise and use a huge file or a two-handed file or rasp type of thing. It really makes no difference. And as long as you keep your eye on the fact that you're not crossing this white line and you're not crossing the tape down on this end, you're good to go. So we're going to, first thing is just do the profile from the side. When you're doing geometric stems, it's important to do it in the proper sequence. And the proper sequence here is pretend it's a tapered stem, that there's no flat sides or anything on it, and just make it angled here. Just a taper stem, and leave a small area here flat. Don't take the angle all the way up to the wood here. Unfortunately, I don't have an 838 sample to show you. You can get online probably and find one. They're uncommon. You'll only find a handful of pictures of them. But look at that if you want some clarity or clarification on what I mean by you need this, an extension of this top line here just a little bit on the stem before the slope starts. And on the bottom, it's actually a 5-facet stem. On the bottom, it'll be flat down there. But we're going to cut the sides, or cut the profile, and then we'll deal with the top view, the profile from 100 or 90 degrees, and be getting close. So here we go. Thanks for your patience. But I found that it's much better to plan your work and work your plan than just to dive in and try to wing it, because you'll forget a step and then you're usually sunk. You have to begin again for some reason or another. Alrighty.